Mrs. Hurst here and Mrs. Peters.
Hi, second graders.
Today we're reading another book in our Funny Characters series, and today's book is called Miss Nelson is Back. It's by James Marshall and Harry Allard. I forgot to look high. Very simple title page. Miss Nelson is back. Oh, there's a better one. Miss Nelson is Back by Harry Allard and James Marshall. One Friday, Miss Nelson told her class that she was going to have her tonsils out. "I'll be away next week," she said, "and I expect you to behave." "Yes, Miss Nelson," said the kids in 207. I don't know if you've ever read another Miss Nelson book, but if you have, I wonder if you remember what happened the last time she was out of school. But at recess, it was another story. "Wow," said the kids. "While Miss Nelson is away, we can really act up." "Not so fast," said a big kid from 309. "Haven't you ever heard of Viola Swamp?" "Who?" said Miss Nelson's kids. "Miss Swamp is the meanest substitute in the whole world," said the big kid. "Nobody acts up when she's around." "Ooh," said Miss Nelson's kids. "She's a real witch," said the big kid. "Ooh," said Miss Nelson's kids. "I'll just bet you get the swamp," said the big kid. This older boy knows a lot about Viola Swamp. I think that he might have been in Miss Nelson's classroom. Today's story takes place a few years later with a new class in room 207. I wonder. On Monday morning, Miss Nelson's kids were all in their seats. They were very nervous. Some of them had not slept well all weekend. "If we get the swamp, I'll just die," said one kid. They heard footsteps in the hall. Slowly, the knob turned, and the door opened. Look at this silhouette. Also a dark shape. The silhouette is a dark shape. Who do you think this could be? It's kind of like a blob. Or Ernie. You know, he looks like Ernie from Sesame Street. It was Mr. Blansworth, the principal. "I shall personally take over this class," he said. Miss Nelson's kids were so relieved. But they soon learned that Mr. Blansworth was not a lot of fun. What does it mean to be relieved? Kind of like when you're really worried about something and all of a sudden you find out it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. It's almost like you get to take a big deep breath and be calm. Look at all the smiles on their faces. They are so happy it's not Miss Swamp. All morning, Mr. Blansworth tried to amuse the class with his corny card tricks. "Oh, brother," said the class. That afternoon, Mr. Blansworth showed the class his favorite shadow pictures. "This is kid stuff," said the class. The next day, Mr. Blansworth demonstrated his favorite bird calls. They were not for 2 days, Mr. Blansworth showed slides of his goldfish, Lucille. Miss Nelson's kids had never been so bored. Mr. Blansworth is trying really hard to amuse the kids, right? Or entertain them. Doesn't seem like it's going that well. While dusting erasers in the schoolyard, 3 of the ringleaders of 207 discussed the situation. "Something will have to be done," they said. "We must get rid of Blansworth." And they hatched a plot. Oh no. I wonder, so dusting erasers is something we used to have to do when I was a little girl, because we did not have whiteboards, we had chalkboards. And when you write on a chalkboard and then erase it, there's lots of dust that get in the erasers. So you would take them outside and bang them together, and it would create this big cloud of chalk dust. So this book takes place a long time ago when there was chalkboards in classrooms. After school, they painted and sewed and borrowed some old clothes, and they practiced some very difficult stunt work in their backyard. The next day, they weren't in class. "That's too bad," said Mr. Blansworth. "They'll miss all the excitement." Yeah, right, I bet the kids are thinking. Mr. Blansworth was about to show the class his collection of ballpoint pens from all over the world when someone came to the door. Slowly, the knob turned and the door opened. Wonder who that could be. "Oh, look," said the class, "Miss Nelson is back." A tall and lumpy Miss Nelson tottered into the room. If somebody totters, they're kind of walking unsteadily, maybe back and forth, side to side as they try to keep their balance. Mr. Blansworth was surprised. "You're back sooner than we expected," he said. The tall and lumpy Miss Nelson didn't speak. Said the kids. Her throat must still be sore." "Are you sure you're well enough?" said Mr. Blansworth. "She's sure," said the kids. "Well, in that case," said the principal, "I'll be getting back to the office. Nice to have you back, Miss Nelson." And he left the room. I wonder why that Miss Nelson is tall and lumpy and not speaking. And it really makes me wonder about Mr. Blansworth just leaving. "Hot dog," cried the class. "We got rid of Blansworth. Now we can just do as we please." And at the stroke of 10, the kids from 207 left the building. No one stopped them. They went straight to the movies, where they saw The Monster That Ate Chicago twice. "This is really living," they said. Afterward, they went to Lulu's, where they stuffed themselves silly, but soon they made a serious mistake. I wonder what that mistake is. We'll have to find out. Heading back to school, they passed Miss Nelson's house. Miss Nelson couldn't believe her eyes. "Those are my kids," she said in a scratchy voice. "What are they doing out of school? And who is that with them?" Miss Nelson telephoned Mr. Blansworth to see what was going on. "You're not Miss Nelson," said Blansworth. "Miss Nelson is back." And he hung up. "Can't fool me," he said. Said Miss Nelson. "Something will have to be done." And she went to her closet. 1907, Miss Nelson's kids were spending an agreeable afternoon. Agreeable afternoon. So they're happy and they're doing whatever they want to. Nobody is making them do anything that they don't want to. It's agreeable. They were very pleased with themselves. We should do this more often, they said. They did not notice the figure out in the hall. Look, there's another silhouette in the door's window. Who could it be this time? Slowly, the knob turned and the door opened. My name is Viola Swamp, said the lady in a scratchy voice. Yipes! Cried the kids. The swamp! That's right, said Miss Swamp. And I'm here to whip this class into shape. Get back to those desks on the double. The class did as it was told. The big kid from 309 was certainly right. Miss Swamp was a real witch. She knew how to get results. The class did a whole week's worth in... I just want to keep reading that as worth. The class did a whole week's work in no time. We shouldn't have gotten rid of Mr. Blansworth, they said. Pipe down, said the swab. Or... Just then, something under a desk attracted her attention. It was a mask. Aha, said Miss Swamp. So that's your little game. And she tried on the mask, just as Mr. Blansworth stepped into the room. Miss Nelson, said Blansworth, I'm of the opinion that someone has been impersonating you. Uh-oh, whispered the kids. So the word impersonating here, I wonder what that might mean. Actually, I know what it means. Do you? It means that when someone pretends to be somebody else. So Mr. Blansworth, it took him a while, but now he's thinking that maybe someone's been acting like Miss Nelson. He is sure easily tricked, isn't he? You don't say, said Miss Swamp. Probably just some kids acting up. I'm sure it won't happen again. And Mr. Blansworth left. And it won't, will it? Said Miss Swamp to the class. Because the swamp will be watching. A minute later, Miss Nelson appeared. I'm back, she said. Hot dog, cried the kids. Are we glad to see you? Didn't you have fun with Mr. Blansworth? Said Miss Nelson. Said the kids. They decided not to mention Miss Viola Swamp. But they wondered why Miss Nelson hadn't seen her in the hall. I'm surprised that Miss Nelson didn't see Viola Swamp in the hallway. How could that have happened? Well, second graders, I hope you enjoyed our book today. We'll see you again soon. Bye.
Bye.